Hi, everybody. I'm Tina Brock. I'm the producing artistic director here at the Idiopathic Ridiculopathy Consortium, and I am your host for Into the Absurd, which is our virtually weekly existential dinner conversation where every Saturday at 5 p.m. we roll up to the table with creators and artists and folks who are doing really interesting things in the community. And while we cannot be with you on the stage right now, what we can do is share the existential stories, and the absurdity is one way of looking at it, of the world around us, and celebrate the actors, literal and otherwise, on the stage who are doing some really exciting and interesting things in the community. So if you've never been with us before, welcome, welcome on Zoom. Come on in and we will take your questions for Jonathan Mayberg, who is our guest today. He is a lot of very interesting things, including a real estate developer. He's an entrepreneur, and we'll get to that in just a couple of minutes. But I want to make sure everybody knows that we'll take your questions for Jonathan today. And if you're coming in on Facebook Live, hello, hello, and definitely the same, put your questions in there for Jonathan. I want to send a big thank you to Erica Holscher, who is the Associate Artistic Director here at the IRC. And she has done a great job helping us get this show up and running and getting all the guests and everybody in today. And Bob Schmidt, who is a co-founder of the IRC, and they're helping to make this all happen. Happy Labor Day to you and welcome. Jonathan Mayberg. Jonathan is, as I said, an entrepreneur. He's a developer. He is a really interesting, worldly person of the arts who I met when I tasked him with something very challenging. And that was, as an actor with not a lot of resources, wanting to find the perfect, very small space in New York City. And I found him through Nest Seekers International, and he just proved to be such a wonderful combination of artist and creative and business person, and really made what could be a very challenging process so wonderful. So I wanted to bring him on the show to talk to him about the real estate market, where New York is going, and for him to help us understand and navigate all of those questions. So let us welcome Jonathan Mayberg to Into the Absurd. Hi, hi.
See you, Tina.
I'm so delighted you would take, when I scheduled this this meeting, of course I forgot it's Labor Day weekend, and so what happens, you have all kinds of closings this week and stuff, so I really appreciate you taking the time to do this. I want to start, Jonathan, back, you are from the Catskills, is that right? And you went to the Rochester Institute of Technology, and is it packaging design was your specialty?
Yes, it's more like package engineering, packaging science.
Packaging science. So like, of course, I immediately think of how that translates over to real estate and houses, and the way in which that works. But let's go back to the packaging science part, and just what was your feeling about, like, what about your personality, and what were you trying to find out through that exploration?
Well, it was actually even quite different. I didn't go to RIT with the intention of doing packaging science, but it was actually quite different. Is my family did photography up in the Catskills. We just always had so much fun. So I also love tech. So RIT is this great university. It is in the arts, it's in tech. It does engineering, it does science. So I figured it'd be like a really fun home. So I went there for originally to do like tech, IT. And then during that time, I started doing a lot of the art classes. And then after that, I just fell into packaging science, and it just really perked my interest, because in reality, no matter what you do, every day you're surrounded by packaging. When you think of global warming, climate change, and then sustainability, and then just fun art, it kind of encompasses all of that.
Mm-hmm.
It just drew me to it. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I do feel like one of the most frustrating things can be when a package is poorly designed, or poorly designed meaning it's either just obviously frustrating to get into, or it doesn't take you on that journey into the product or the understanding of what the aesthetic of this is about. Is that what the science of it is really talking about? Is that part of the psychology of it?
I think there's a few more things that go into it. There's things
I'm sure.
For example, you let's talk about cosmetics, for example. You're taking out your nice eye cream and you have this eye cream and it's coming in this jar. And then the jar, you're wondering why there's this little, I'm just going to call it a tab on the very top. And you're like, why do I have to take this off? But everything is there to contain it. So that way, whenever you're using it, it stays at like the most highest level of efficacy. So you never have to worry about things such as spoilage. And also there's things you have to make sure that it doesn't interact. Then just to go to beyond that, you also want it to be visually appealing. So that way you want to do your fun regimen of serums, lotions, then looking beautiful for the rest of your life. And then there's the other hand for like pharmaceutical and food and beverage. And then just, the fun little question of like, why is my bag of potato chips half air it looks like and the rest chips? There's like a lot to it, more on the engineering and science side that just goes even beyond how the experience is when you open
Right, is for you the engineering of that. So you came out, is your degree in packaging engineering?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then you worked for some startups, right, in entertainment. And tell us about the next step. Like you came out and
Yeah, so it was really fun. I worked with Estee Lauder. I worked with a few other different fun cosmetic companies. And then as we all know, all of a sudden the financial crisis hit. So I myself and almost everyone I knew lost their job.
This was in 2008.
2008.
Mm-hmm.
And so for fun, I was just throwing parties on the side just for fun because you're in New York City, you want to go out and you want to have a good time. And what at the time where I was just doing it as more of like a side hustle, side gig. But at the end, it was fun because I was bringing all my friends together and we were just having a blast. I just woke up and one of my friends from childhood said, "Hey, let's make a living out of this. Let's do it." And that turned in from the occasional party to throwing events, doing things overseas, then really integrating my past lives of my family doing photography in the Catskills and all the people I would meet, now integrating that into putting to an event. So like today, I'm actually dressed in derby attire because I throw a fun party every year.
I wanted to ask you about the derby party. Yeah. I saw some great photos on Facebook from that event and I thought he's the perfect person to shepherd this. Yeah. Yeah. So you just took that, your gold, your strong suit and sharpened that tool. And then that led to, because I was going to say, so were you thinking event planning or was it more like, how did the real estate piece come into it?
So I would say my family also does real estate in the Catskills as well. So I would say that at one point in time, I was more doing Manhattan nightlife. The reality is I was just not enjoying the parties and the events that were going on. Even though I was producing them and I think I was doing a phenomenal job, the energy and buzz, I was finding myself drawn to more places in, let's say, Brooklyn. I was finding myself drawn to Berlin, Tel Aviv, and I was feeling like the energy of what I wanted. I was feeling like sapped of my creativity. And family does real estate. And I had a really good friend, Michael, and he was friends with the owner of Net Seekers, Eddie Shapiro. And he said, "You'd be a perfect fit here." And at first I was just thinking like, why would I do real estate? I had this image, which is going to sound, for some people, accurate. For some people, it wouldn't make any sense. I was equating in my mind that for real estate that you would have this broker who didn't really know anything that he was doing and was just trying to sell you something that you don't want and then you would never see them again. So I was resistant to doing real estate. I go, I don't want to be associated with that. But then I woke up one day and said, wait, if this is who I'm thinking is at the top of their game and I'm so much better than this in terms of really wanting to help people, I'm going to kill it. And being at Nest Seekers, I couldn't ask for a better place.
I thought, early on in our meeting, just the connection to sort of the theater world and entertainment world and whatnot. Certainly that was a connection that we had that made things easy to get off. Like how can you not talk about all the stuff that's happening in that regard or was happening at this particular time? But I guess I want to find out from you, what I felt was super special about what you brought to the table was, it wasn't like when I would answer a question that you would ask, it almost felt like you were as much listening for what I didn't say as what I did say. And I wonder if, like, you know, when you're this is not meant to sound like, but if you're diagnosing something, or you are diagnosing whatever it is, not a medical thing, but that you have to really pay close attention, because I would imagine people tell you, or let me ask you, do people tell you they want certain things and then you only come to find out that is absolutely not what they're looking for in a place at all? And when does that come out in the process?
It's a really good question. I'd say I do a few things. I personally, as I always call it, an initial consultation, where I'll talk to someone beforehand. And for me, that consultation is really not just a consultation, it's really me interviewing them and them interviewing me to make sure that there's, let's say, some sort of alignment. Because some people want to get something, but it may be unrealistic. You know, maybe they read something in the news that, we'll just talk about a rental, for example. Someone wants a 2-bedroom apartment for $2,000 in a prime part of anywhere in New York City, when in reality the market is like 5,000. But you know, someone told them that they got it, and it's just not realistic. So it's making sure also you want someone to be happy, you want someone to get what they want, but also it be possible. But I also feel that everything is possible, nothing is impossible. So a lot of it is really probably what people do in theater, people do anywhere, is my job is really at the end to only listen to you, to listen to what you are thinking, what you want, and to provide you all sides of the picture, such as if we're sailing on an ocean and there's a massive wave about to crash into you, I'm telling you where the wave is, and we can decide if we want to crash into it or not. And at the end, painting the picture and providing it to you. That's the first step, at least.
Yeah, yeah. And I, you know, how do I say, what would you say is the largest misstep that you see people make? Is it just that they have, like, they're not willing to think outside the box, or the things they think are going to be important to them or not important to them end up being different? Or is it they don't listen to you? Or what do you think? Is there like a thread that you see through that comes up?
There are a few things. I would say recently I had a really interesting deal that just closed, which was great. And we just closed, and I felt like it was almost like a PhD in real estate. Is only because everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Everything that at the end, where you're trying to establish and ensure that, no, this is a very, it might not seem like it to everyone, but this is a very, in a way, very, not in a way, it is, it's a very serious job, only because this is someone's typically one of the largest investments they make in their lives. So it's very much of an emotional process for someone. Like the movie Star Trek, he told him, Spock, you're emotionally compromised.
Well, I just remember sitting in that closing meeting and it going on for a long, 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 you know, I mean, just because it did, you know, but thinking, and all, you know, and just thinking, there's a lot of people sitting at this table right now, and it
a
being
lot of money is
a
exchanging
lot,
hands.
and very tense, and just, and because it's a whole different thing buying real estate in New York than it is in, say, another city. But I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You were.
No, it's good. You're absolutely right. I would say it's more of the biggest issue that is not really an issue because it's life. We're emotional beings. Is for someone who this is their biggest investment of their lives, it's important that I'm also there to help and support them and to ensure, you know, things can go wrong, but as long as I'm providing you all sides of the coin, so that way it does not become too emotional, because at the end, your emotions can cloud the reality. So it's all bringing out to more of a realistic position, such as, this is a good example, is, you know, I could say to you, hey, you know, we really like this place. Right now we're discussing on, let's say, a $500,000 deal, $5,000, but this is your dream place. This is what you want. They're getting a mortgage, and you know, $5,000 on a mortgage in reality might not cost you so much. Is I'll tell you, hey, you can get this for 5,000 less or more, depending, and you might say yes or no. And then let's say you get the deal and you're very happy, and you know, you're thanking me for it, or you said no to me and you didn't want to do it, which is okay too. And at the end, you lose the deal. And for the next year, you're sad possibly because your dream place that you've been thinking about for the last X amount of years, you can't get. Or, like you get the wrong lawyer and the lawyer tells you to sue someone. And I tell you, hey, maybe suing your building is not the best idea. And now you're stuck with something that's hard to sell because you decided A or nay. But as long as I'm providing you with like the potential outcome, you're always going to win.
Do you think people getting emotional one way or the other is a snag a lot of the time? So I guess you're trying to direct that emotion in the right way to fulfill the dream and give them what they're hoping for, whether you're like where I was, which is a very different kind of purchase than someone, who is, but emotions are emotions. So is that really what you're doing, is trying to navigate that and make sure that the emotions are working for that client in the best way they can?
I think it's just providing the reality is, this is the reality. This is what's going on. And providing you that reality and allowing you to know both sides. So that way at the end, you can make the best decision and it's your decision. So when you look in the mirror, you know that you don't have any second guesses. You made the right decision. And it doesn't matter what I think at the end. It's your decision. So I provide you all the facts so you can make the best informed, logical decision. So when you're spending, one of the biggest investments, if not the biggest investment of your life, you're happy and comfortable. So the emotion at the end, your emotion is more happiness and feeling really good about it versus, having any regrets.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask about, do you ever have a situation where a person comes to you and says, I really want to live in, name the neighborhood. And then after talking with them and you're thinking, I don't think it's just like the casting isn't right on that at all, or at least from what you know of the person. And then sort of, how do you negotiate that? Just open that market up or open that neighborhood up as much as you can and then allow them to just try to, but does that ever happen where you see that and you're just like, I don't see that?
Almost every single time.
Does
funny.
That happened with me?
I just had a sales call, just earlier. And then also I had a sales call just last week. And for one, it was for someone in the Hamptons. For one, it's someone in the Catskills. For one, it's someone in Manhattan. And for another, it's one in Brooklyn. And, for example, let's just use the Catskills as an example. Right now, you're having people who are leaving the city and going to the Hamptons and the Catskills. And maybe they have a friend there. But for the Catskills specifically, you could say, hey, I want to be up there. And you go ahead and you get a place. But, you may never have had a cold winter. Next thing you know, because you didn't, let's say, you use a broker, which if you're a buyer, it makes sense to have a buyer's broker because you don't have to pay them. And at the end, they only care about your personal interests. But instead, you didn't do that. You just went potentially direct and you found this place and it looks great. It hits all the check marks. Then you find out that, you're an hour and a half from any civilization. Maybe you do like that or not. Or, the snow's piled up, but no one's going to shovel or take out. And then also, it can take you an hour and a half to get each way. My father and I talk about it all the time. Or for, with our TV show that we had out of Netflix is, it's called $1 Million Beach House. And out in the Hamptons, people want to go out there, but they don't realize really where they want to be. Maybe they want to be in Southampton. Maybe they want to be in Montauk. Or here in the city, the call earlier, the person really was describing what I would call Union Square, the best of the East Village. But when we're talking, they're saying they want to be in Hudson Yards, but what they really want is Union Square, East Village. So it's
those seem like very different places.
Very different places, but that's okay. So it's a matter of finding out if they were to close their eyes, what their dream location is, and they describe it to you. And that's what the house looks like, or anything, the surroundings, the vibration, really where they want to be. Because someone can say, for example, the East Village goes all the way to Avenue D. Maybe someone doesn't want to live on Avenue D. So it's breaking down what they describe to you, providing that to them. And then in addition to that, you are going to show them the other places because, they should see it because this is what they want.
Do you think you're right more of the time? I mean, in your own mind, do you think Do you, all right, I won't pull you on your, on whether you think you're right more of the time, but my sense is laying out a few criteria, like there was a pretty, like, I just felt like it was lasered in, as to what, not from my end, but more from your listening. And I think it's an art to diagnose, if you will, what the person really, and all this stuff about other things that go on, and if it's snow, if it's traffic, if it's whatever, let's talk a little bit about the exodus, or the not exodus, but the discussion of people leaving the city and going out to the Hamptons and whatnot.
Yes.
Been articles written about that, and I'm really interested in your thoughts on that.
In which part?
Well, we were talking before the show that, like, it's an ebb and a flow always, right, over 5 to 10 year periods, and this is this very specific kind of situation in which you could understand how people would maybe think about. But a question that I've had with a number of my friends recently is just, but I don't know. Don't you think you're going to want to come back? Don't you think you're going to get, I don't know, lonely out there, or that may be just very basic analysis of it. But were you surprised that you would see some people wanting to flee?
Not really. I don't get surprised very often, because I think that it goes back to emotion, right? When I told you, like, we're humans. And I think that there's always an ebb and flow. So if you read history, or if you read, let's say, what's happened in New York, I view New York as a modern day Rome. If you were to read a history book and look at the Roman Empire, where everybody is, the epicenter was Rome. New York City, I view as the Rome of the world. So a lot of the calls and what goes on when someone wakes up in the morning in Zimbabwe, maybe Russia, or anywhere in the world, you might hear London, you might hear Paris. Until quite recently, like, you might hear things like Tokyo, but everybody thinks New York. The energy that's in New York is like anywhere in the world. And there's a reason why Frank Sinatra sang the song, if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. So that energy that you have here, and I've traveled the world, there's just something about being in New York that just draws people. But with that, yes, people do leave and they do come and go. But where I am on 48th and Madison, Chase is not having one of the biggest deconstructions of a building that's taking up pretty much a whole avenue and putting up something even higher, and they're doing it level by level. So
this is Chase Morgan.
Yes, and I don't see it, and that's on 48th and Madison, and I'm seeing it every day. I don't really feel New York is going anywhere, but I think, like, let's say after 9/11, after the financial crisis, the 80s and mortgage and bonds, I grew up in the Catskills. I saw it. There were all these hotels there. And at one point, it got very quiet. Some of the hotels went away because people had this idea that they wanted to be on a cruise ship, and they had central AC. They didn't want to be in nature, and that happened. Now everybody's going to the Catskills. If anything, prices have skyrocketed in the Hamptons as well. But on the flip side, prior to this current pandemic, I was getting calls of people who had left the city during those times, trying to come back because they saw the prices had come down and they want to get that. So right now in Manhattan, which you're not really hearing as much about, is I'm getting calls all the time of people who want to be here. Mm-hmm. And I'm pretty much slammed with back-to-back showings. So I think that at the end, people will always come and go. And at the end, New York is still not going to go anywhere.
Do you think it's providing more opportunities for people that might not have previously considered it, artists and creatives and people that just want to be, as you say, around that energy that's, like, very hard to duplicate? You can't duplicate it. It just has to be organic. But do you see that happening? Or are you seeing?
Absolutely. I have friends right now. They are taking advantage of the opportunity. And I have a few friends who are artists, and I explain to them, I go, both of you guys live together already. It seems that you enjoy living together. And I have young professionals who live together. This is a perfect time for you just to get a place. So 4 or 6 people are just getting townhouses in Brooklyn, and they looked at it, hey, we can rent out the 3rd and 4th floor, and renting this out, it would pay my mortgage, and I can live on the 1st floor and garden level. And with rates at like less than 3%, it's almost like you're being given free money, because in 2 years, rentals are really low. It's going to go up by over 20% 2 years from now, at least in my opinion. So it happened after the financial crisis in 9/11. So for someone who is, let's say, a serious buyer, and you have some serious sellers who's during Labor Day right now are saying, where is everybody? Like, why everyone's sleeping? It's like being in Christmas and they're at holiday parties where they're maybe away in the woods or in the beach.
Right, right.
Underneath the radar and come in with a number that would have been unheard of. And that's what's going on.
Let me get a couple questions in here from folks. What's the longest time that you've worked with a client before something actually closed?
It's a really good question. So over 3 years, one of my colleagues, he touched it. And also then in addition to that, I had a client, really great guy, worked so hard, day in, day out, has a family of 3 children. He's supporting the family. And the first day on this was actually, I guess, longer than 3 years. This was a while ago now. I met him my first week on the job. Working with nest seekers at least. And I called him, we had this great conversation. And so I just followed up with him every few months. Hey Fred, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. How's your building going? And then right before the pandemic, I got a call and he said, I'm ready to sell. I want to sell these buildings. I'm ready to go. And he goes, you're the only one who's stayed in touch with me, checked in how I was doing. You provided me with advice and everything I needed to do, even helped me refinance the place, and you never asked for anything in return. So I know you're the right person to sell my place. It was so heartwarming. So for me, it's really not about the sale. Really, I do this just to help people. Of course, money is important. So, as long as I'm able to help in some way, I think that if you keep on giving, it comes back. On the flip side, Ryan in our company was telling me a story that for 7 years, he wrote someone about every week or so, just checking in and then sending him listings, no response. And then out of the blue, he writes, hey Ryan, how's it going? I'm ready to go. Sorry for not responding back to you in a while.
And how long was that? 7 years, did he say? But doesn't it at some point, like, I don't know, like that's got to feel great, I think, in the end, that you kept at it, that you didn't assume that it wasn't somebody that didn't want your help, but that it was somebody that wasn't ready right then. It's not a no, it's something else. I think that's great. If somebody was going to go, if I was going to come up there now, where would you direct me? Not knowing me as a person, but in other words, where's a good place to be if I were looking for, and obviously it's all dependent upon who you are as a person and what you're looking for, but are there particular parts of the city right now that you feel are like a really good thing to look at, irrespective of your personality?
So I actually would do exactly what I said in the beginning, is I would have a consultation. I don't think it's as easy as just saying, hey, you're calling, this is really
yeah.
Because everybody's energy is different. So in a way, someone might come in and think of feng shui. For some people, it might be natural light. For some people, it might be, I don't want to be in this luxury building with a spa, an infrared sauna, Japanese plunge baths and meditation chambers, and the biggest infinity pool outside of Singapore. They just want a townhouse. Yeah. And they want an outdoor garden. So it's important, really, it's not as easy just to say this is where it's good to be, because there's
right
everywhere.
I mean, and certainly every area of the city finds its sort of a good place to be at a certain time, because I remember there were a couple of neighborhoods that I wanted to look at, and then, but I'm thinking that's going to be too far or something. There was other criteria there. So we've got a lot of questions. Is a U.S. buyer different in some way from an overseas buyer or a Midwest buyer from an East Coast buyer, and obviously geographically? But do you have in your mind, I'm going to expand on this question, which may not have been what Robin was looking for, but I'm also part 2 to that question. Is there an East Coast, is there a Midwest buyer? Do you notice certain similarities in the people that come in, or is there a buyer from London is there something you see that's a thread?
I'd say the most common thread I've seen, that because it's not as easy as a one-word response. It's really, that's why the consultation is so important, because I don't really like assuming anything, because I think when I assume anything, I assume incorrectly. And I don't really like to assume, because for me, that's more of like profiling someone. But I would say that things that you have similarities, for example, certain people outside the United States might like a certain area more because they might be looking at this more as an investment, not a place that they're living. And they're looking to have a place to park their money. So they're looking for a specific type of place.
Yeah.
Well, someone might be coming here and saying this is a pied-à-terre, meaning that they're renting a place so that way they don't have to rent, because they find out that they maybe come a few times a year and they rent a hotel. And they did the math finally and said the price of me paying a hotel, which is like might be a few $100s, if not more, a night, and I come here for maybe a month out of the year, it makes much more sense to own a place and have my own place. So they might be looking for a specific type. So it's really more about the usage and the desire. While someone moving, maybe they don't want to buy a place specifically. Maybe they want to rent a place or a few places to see what vibe they like best.
Mm-hmm.
I would say in a way there are, but that consultation is important just to ensure that you don't make the wrong assumptions.
Sure. Yeah. No, of course. Yeah. And I think I didn't do justice to Robin's questions there, because I definitely didn't want to, don't think she intended that we're like, oh yeah, those Midwesterners, whoa, look how, and I'm from the Midwest, so I can say that, I think I can say that.
But like something different.
Yeah. Well, I think it gets back to, and I feel like this is it's a strong suit of any, person being very good at what they do, is just really not just listening, but taking in all the cues, right? I felt like that you were really listening with your toes to what I was saying, and just so well organized and really thoughtful about the process. And that's just that's a gift. I mean, that's, I guess, what we should bring to the table, whatever we do. What do you think is your strongest skill? Like, what sets you apart from I don't even know how many, I couldn't even dart a number of how many real estate professionals there are in New York City, but like, how does one think about that? Highlighting your strongest skills and what makes Jonathan,
Yeah. I think it's really my way of being with people. I was really just fortunate and lucky enough to have an amazing mother and father who also at the end had this business of entertainment and photography and just dealing with people every day in the Catskills. And I was really lucky. I pretty much grew up, you could say, at like Kutcher's Country Club in the Catskills because my family would always be there. So I had this I was really just lucky. And I was able to grow up in an area where every single weekend I had a new best friend to make. So, people in the city would come out in the winter and they would go to the Catskills. They put their kids in day camp. And at the end, I would go over and was like, hey, what's your name? I'm Jonathan. We're going to be best friends this weekend.
This weekend. And not after this weekend. You're my enemy Monday, but but for now.
Yeah. I'd have to stop people and shoot their photographs, and then at the end develop the film, and then at the end, after developing the film, sell it to them the next morning. And those skills that I acquired at the end have translated to everything I've done. So for me, it's more about really just reading the energy of a room. And I really enjoy connecting people. So if you were to ask any of my friends, I think they'd tell you why I love parties and events so much is I just like bringing people together. And I consider myself like my own personal LinkedIn. My friends will write me and say, hey, I'm looking to go to this restaurant, and I can connect into maybe the person in there and they can't get a reservation. At the end, they're looking for a job, and I might know someone who's in that company who they can just have a conversation with, and maybe that's how they get the job. On my Derby Day party, it's funny is I have people who at the end met each other and got married, and it's their anniversary now. So I really enjoy those things. So I think it's important that in anything you do, I enjoy people, and I think that's my big skill. But for anyone, it's important to just enjoy what you're doing, because then it doesn't feel like you're working. You're just having fun, and you're staying young.
And that enjoyment just spreads so thoroughly through through it. So you don't like that, what you were speaking about in the beginning of the show, where, you had a certain idea of maybe what a person doing that job would be like, or what, I don't know, you said, I don't know if I want to do that. And then, but I think that that's the beauty of it is, you hear it a lot. Wow, if you just love it and you enjoy it and you really thoroughly cellularly bring it to the table, then the person will feel that ease and will feel that. I felt like you're such an enormous ambassador for the city. You're the only other person. I have a friend that lives in Chicago, and I swear this woman is like the ambassador for Chicago. And I feel like you definitely, served that role. There's a bunch of questions here. Let me just, Dustin wants to know, what market in New York do you think is the most undervalued, overvalued market?
Undervalued and overvalued. I would say that Manhattan right now specifically, I would say that where the prices have gone, you can get some deals that would have been unheard of, especially when you look at rates the way they are. You could look at, if you make the right investment right now with what's going on in Manhattan, they're going to see a great return. I would say that if you are someone who likes outdoor garden spaces, a townhouse right now in Brooklyn, the prices have gone up actually during this time, but I feel that in most of these areas, they're going to continue to rise. I do think, though, I had a friend, Larry, and one of my closest friends. He has a great place in the West Village. And I had a conversation with him once, and I try to look at everybody's investment as an investment, but also he said something that always stuck with me. He goes, it's also your home. You don't want to always look at your home as your investment, because you want to be at home. So your home is what gives you this creative energy and makes you happy, which at the end allows you to do even more greater things. So I would say it's really your energy. And then from there saying, hey, this is a great area. Is it an investment? And if it is an investment, I have a whole backline of investments opportunities I can provide. If it's your home, it's a very different type of conversation. So from the investment angle, I think Manhattan is right now has some of the best investments that you'll ever find. Probably in this lifetime that you're in right now, you won't find a better opportunity. If you're looking for the dip is here. If you at the end were telling me that you don't like Manhattan, well, there's certain areas in Brooklyn where I think that you can invest 1 to 1.5, and in a couple of years you probably would have doubled, if not more, because I've done this before and already. If you're telling me you don't want to be in Manhattan, I have those investments in other parts of the country. I was lucky enough to be part of an investment down in Austin, Texas. Probably if you put in 1, you would leave with 1.4. Now on the home end, it really depends on what your energy is, and then from there we can look at it from both ends of the picture.
There's a bunch in here that I want to come in. As you work with, well, go ahead.
No, I was just hoping that was clear for.
Oh yeah, I think so. If not, chime in and let us know, and we'll keep clarifying here. As you work with a client in stripping down what they really want and are dreaming for, what are some of the more surprising flexibilities that you've advised people to consider?
Really good ones. So we'll go with rents, for example. Someone looking for a rental. So the thing I hear almost the most is I'll ask them what their critical factors. If it doesn't have this, they're walking out the door. Almost every time I hear washer dryer, and I go, okay. And it's funny. I'm not from New York City. How would you not have a washer dryer? How can you not wash your clothes in your home?
Right. Well, it's perfectly logical thinking, right? Like you go downstairs and you do it, but you still go downstairs and do it, at least in a lot of places, right?
Yeah.
In New York.
So it's funny is that if you're renting a place, I like to say that's about $50 to $100 a person of an increase, just to have the luxury of having per month, to have the luxury of the washer dryer in your apartment. Usually, let's say if we don't look at where the market is or has been, I'd say that's a good conservative number. But then you can ask someone well, what happens if I told you that they'll come to your door, pick up your laundry, and they'll come back to you washed and folded, and at the end you don't have to take a few hours to go out and wash it, or to be at home. All of a sudden, when you equate that number and they're at, let's say, a limit as to how much they can spend, it doesn't matter anymore. Another one is someone will say, like, when you're all done, is I'll ask them, let's say you get your unicorn and you get everything you want. Is $3,500 a month the max you spend, or could you do $3,550? And I took someone out, and all of a sudden it became $6,000. So it's important to keep an open mind, because once you're with them, what someone feels that they want can sometimes be the exact opposite, like the neighborhood. They thought they want Hudson Yards, but at the end they were in Union Square, East Village.
Is that, you mentioned that before when we were talking about one of the earlier questions, is that a place, are those two places where you might have a buyer that could go either way? I mean, are there similarities?
So different. Like
yeah, because I feel that way.
It's
just from, yeah. From,
but both great areas. It just depends.
Yeah. But just the energy feels very, very different.
Going to the farmer's market, it's fun. You walk out in Union Square and you have your farmer's market and you can get fresh produce. And it's a great experience. In Hudson Yards, you have like my favorite place, Citarella, which has great produce, and it's a great way of getting food. You have your Whole Foods, but maybe you really just wanted to pick your food every week.
The show, let's talk about your role on $1 Million Beach House, which just started on Netflix pretty recently. So tell me about your involvement in the show and what that was like.
It was great. I would say that I don't have any airtime on the show, but I was very actively involved with the show. I was fortunate enough to be aware of it when filming and everything was going on. My colleague Peggy's on the show, and she did a phenomenal job. And Justin, who's on the show, is a developer, investor, and a very close friend of mine. And when he was looking at getting places out there, it just so happened he was there. So it was nice to be part of that production and have people out there. And it's great because you're seeing exactly how it's going live. It's unscripted. And
so how did that work, Jonathan? Did they just sort of set up scenarios, today, they're buying and selling and they're introducing clients and whatnot and then they would just sort of let it run with a very loose idea of where it was headed?
Well,
like the specific episode?
Is, I personally, as I was saying, I'm not personally on the show. I do my Derby Day party and the polo show was going on at the same time I was there. But with, I think, with pandemic as it is, it's X amount of episodes. I'm really rooting for season 2 because there's a lot of stuff in store, especially with what's going on right now with everyone buying in the Hamptons. It's great material. I think it's just you have a lot of personalities, so it's fun to see how those all mingle together. Because the Hamptons is unlike any place in the world for real estate. It takes the best of Manhattan, but you feel like you're in Palma de Mallorca, I feel.
So I don't know that place, but I can imagine what you're saying, that it's the best of, right.
You get like the best of both worlds, and the show just, I feel did a great job in trying to captivate that energy. And, you would love Justin. He's great. He also is in the yards. He does development. He buys places, and his family invests all over the world. And you have these great properties there. And, that time, that property that he bought probably has gone up by like 30-40% during this time, if not even higher. So the Hamptons is just a really interesting place to invest in.
Yeah, sure. Well, I mean, thus a show, right? I love to getting back to the comment that you made before about, it's a home. It's just so much is tied up in that. Let's say you're not doing it for an investment. You're doing it, and unlike any other place I've lived, in the country, including Indiana and St. Louis, and
fun city.
What's that?
They're fun states and cities.
Yeah, a very small town in Indiana and Wilmington, Delaware. So it's just like a kind of smattering of things. What's that?
Delaware, Wilmington, Delaware. People from there love going to Philly.
And yeah, I mean, that's a whole discussion in and of itself. Because I lived in suburbia, and that's a very different. A friend and I were just talking about that today, how just being however many feet apart from your next door neighbor, but yet I felt, it felt like a different world, kind of like you didn't have that closeness that actually you even have when you walk into a building, and I guess it's just all, what is your sense of community that you want to try to build there? Oh gosh, there's a question in here that I wanted to get to you, and
Go for it. Ask me as many questions.
we're going back to packaging right now because I'm really fascinated about the packaging part too. Do you see a different philosophy or approach? I'm really jumping ship on this one, but thank you, Bob, for your question. Do you see a different philosophy or approach in packaging in other cultures? Interesting, because I've
100%.
yeah, I was gonna say.
So for me, I love packaging. My goal with it was I had a really great professor. His name was Fritz Jambrick. And he broke it down to saying, packaging science is not rocket science. It's common sense solutions to common day needs. And so when just that one thing has gotten me, is just stuck in my brain, and I've translated that to everything. And that one of my clients came to me and he was having this big problem. He was from South Africa, and the ingredients in his products out of this world. Oh, natural ingredients, oh, organic. And I would say that with the packaging that he had, he was confused, and he said, I'm just not getting any traction here in the US. And so here I think I was going into a meeting to show him his new commercial property for his new business, or where he might potentially be buying or getting a new place, turned into a whole hour plus long conversation about me breaking down his packaging, because he has all these great products, but his packaging wasn't translating to the US audience what he wanted to translate, because of how he had developed his packaging for his audience was more for South Africa and Northern Africa, which what they're looking for in packaging, what's capturing their attention, is completely different than maybe someone in New York or California or Alabama or Arkansas. And so I came in and I said to him, he's like, my friend Armand is a great designer, why don't you give me a few of your products and I can sit down with him and we can come up with a whole new way of redesigning your packaging and it'll probably work. After that time, the pandemic happened, but I checked in with him and he did take some of that advice, and now he's doing some of the ideas I gave him for Instagram and other marketing, and he did change the packaging, and he goes, this one thing has changed around, because nobody wants parabens all the time on their body and their skin, and plastics and microplastics. They want real organic ingredients and also things that are good for the environment. So the stuff that you're tossing away is really recyclable, not kind of recyclable.
Oh, so literally the composition of the packaging, sort of. So when, say, a US buyer would be much more inclined to be paying attention to, is this going to be?
Well, not even that. It's really just, it could be as simple as the graphics.
Right. Well, that's what I was thinking. You were really mostly talking about is how do you attract, or is it visual that is the thing that's different in different cultures?
Yes, exactly.
Hmm.
But it's so much fun because it's like you're creating art every day, and art's fun.
Art is fun. Art is fun. Case study question. Would you advise someone whose priority is to invest in experience, say travel, rather than material things? And because of this, the idea of owning property feels alien.
Let me just repeat to make sure I understood that. The question is someone who loves
wants experience, like I value experiences more than I do things, I think is what Josh is saying here. Josh was saying, and because of this habit, the idea of how would you advise someone that really is thinking like, I want to put my money towards experiences, and I don't want to be, I'm putting words onto the thing, but I don't want to have that thing.
I would say it'd be starting with what I've done for many clients and still continue to do. It really comes down to your finances, and I'm not just your real estate agent. At the end, I have lots of arrows in my quiver to fire out at you to give you ideas. So I'll provide you with ideas of, where do you see your life being? Or do you want to retire by 40, 50, or 60? Do you want to save all of your money and have for experiences? Or, or also, how are you investing your money currently? So that way, when you're later in life, you don't have to worry about, working as much or not at all. So what I would say is like, all right, so you like experiences. Well, I love experiences. I love traveling. I think that real estate specifically is one of the best investments, if not the best investment in the world. I truly believe this to my core. You look at all the major fortunes of the world, it's in real estate. Tesla stock, Microsoft, Google, Nvidia is great. I love these stocks too. But the stock market, if you want to look at it long term, but also real estate, you look at long term. I try to not to look at any investment as a flip. I like to look at it as a long term investment. And so if you don't want to invest in, let's say, real estate or certain items, the best answer is don't. If you want, but what it sounds like for Josh, correct?
Joshua.
Joshua, is what I would say would start with a financial planning question of where your finances are, where you want to be, what type of financial security you want, how much money do you have and what do you have to play with? And then taking this number and creating a strategy for you for, in year 2, this is where you're expecting to be conservatively. I don't like giving large numbers, but by year 5, year 10, where that's going. And are you okay with that? Are you okay with holding this for X amount of time? And also, is this going to be your home? And if it's going to be your home, if you're like some people and you don't have you're paying, let's say, $3,000, $4,000 a month, that's $36,000 to $48,000 a year. And let's say you've lived there now for 10 years, that's $480,000. Well, maybe the place that you owned it 10 years earlier, when you first got that place, would have cost you about $500,000 to own. So that $500,000, if you invested that in New York real estate about 10 years ago, you would have made a good sum of money at this point. You might have even gone up by 50 to 100%. But is that worth it to you?
Mm-hmm. And I guess pursuing some of those experiences, I mean, Joshua specifically talks about travel, but if you want to be in a place where you're going to experience those experiences, then sometimes, as you pointed out earlier, if you're coming up or staying with friends, or you're doing, you're going to the hotel and you're, et cetera, when you start to add that up, it really makes experiences possible.
No, good, because life is an experience. You're only given one life. So I love hiking. I love traveling. So maybe you buy a place and you don't buy, a co-op. Maybe you bought a condo, or maybe you bought your townhouse. Well, now you have a property which you can sublet or you can rent it out. So at the end, maybe by owning real estate, you're able to have 1,000 more experiences than you would if you didn't own it. Because now when you leave, you can sublet or rent it out and you can go traveling for X period of time. So maybe all of a sudden you find out that real estate allows you to have more. At least that's how I did it. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Jonathan, it is getting up on the 6 o'clock hour. I could talk about this all day long. I have so many questions for you, which just means that maybe we'll do this again. And I just really want to thank you for taking the time over what sounds like it's been a busy week, and a busy week with the show and just a lot happening. And you're taking the time to share some wisdom about your life and the passions that you have, which no doubt contribute to so much happiness on the end for the happy homeowners that are on the other end. So, yeah. So thank you so very much, and I'm really wishing you good luck in the months to come up there in my favorite place.
If any of your guests have any questions, they're more than welcome to email me or give me a phone call.
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll put all the stuff in the links and make sure it's all posted in the chat, and when we post this up on Zoom or on YouTube and Facebook as well. So happy rest of the Labor Day weekend to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. And thanks to you, everybody, for spending some of your Labor Day weekend with us. And I hope that you'll join us. Look forward to the next 4 weeks, Saturdays at 5 p.m. during the Fringe Festival. And it's a tinge of sadness that we say that, of course, I think many of us wish we could be on the stage and be together in a theater. But we're going to keep going with our virtual conversations. And on next week's show, David Fox and Cameron Calzol, and they are journalists and theater critics, and they do some really interesting work on recliningstandards.com and on Parterre Box. So we're going to talk to them all about their work and some really fascinating analysis they've been putting out there for us during the time of COVID. And it's going to be a fun conversation. So I hope you'll join us next Saturday at 5 p.m. You'll be getting some information from us if you're on the IRC's mailing list. And if you are not, we hope you'll scoot over to the IRC, get on the mailing list, and become a part of the conversation. And until then, just enjoy the rest of this holiday that hardly feels like a holiday on one level, but we hope that it's an enjoyable one for you. And we hope that you have health and happiness over these next couple of days. Take care.